welcome back to the class, everyone. You've heard it been said many times by myself, other content creators, your guildmates, etc., that you should always stay on target when it comes to your farming goals. And while most of the time that is true, there are a few exceptions out there in which you're going to want to pivot. That was a very dramatic way to say the word pivot, but moving on, what we want to look at here today are 5 different reasons why, when you're going after that one galactic legend that you've been working on for a month or two now, and you see something else, maybe shiny, come across, and you're trying to evaluate whether or not you should go after it. As said in the very beginning of the video, the answer is probably you shouldn't, but I want to talk about the exceptions because every rule has exceptions. And the first one that I want to talk about, and this is really specific for galactic legend types farms and or Jedi Knight Luke, something larger like that, is if you have not already invested in the bad requirements for whatever that character is, I would still say you have room to pivot to something else that you want to for whatever reason. And what I mean by this on a practical level is every galactic legend has, 15 requirements or so, and there's always a group of them that are good that you would want anyways, and there's always a group of them that are bad that you would only do from a value perspective because there's a galactic legend on the horizon. If we look at C has Imperial Troopers, several Imperial Troopers that are needed to be able to go after them, Veers, Piet, and Stark. And if you've gone after them and you're like, wow, I really can't change farms because I've already started the C thing, I already invested in troopers, I would ask you to tweak your thinking a little bit because it's really nice to have troopers no matter what. They have an assault battle, they're pretty good in PvP, they do lots of fun things. You only really can't pivot once you've already started to invest a lot in the bad requirements. Krennic being the example for C. Lando I think is actually needed for a few now. He doesn't really do much. He's quite the fall from grace when comparing to say CLS that is also needed for Galactic Legend Leia, or even if we're looking at JML Chewbacca for example. And then Clone Sergeant's needed for JMK. If you're going after JMK and you're like, oh, I R7'd or R8, I can't remember what it is, for GK and General Grievous, I can't drop the JMK farm. Maybe you can, because those are great characters that have at high relics anyways. You should really only say that you have to finish this farm at the point once you've already invested in the bad characters, because you're not going to see any return of value on those until you get the final character. So that would be one area not to pivot, is once you've already invested in the bad characters. If you've only invested in the good ones that you were going to use anyways, there might still be room to do it. And the second kind of area we want to look at when it comes to pivoting is, were there external changes in the game or coming from outside of the game that are shifting the value you're currently looking at? Practically, what does that look like? I was, for a while there, looking at bringing a lot of the relic levels up on Sortie because she's a good PvP team. She's getting revamped a little bit now with the whole Lobot rework and whatnot. And I was going to leave Iden kind of on the side. However, a few things really tweaked my thinking in regards to that. And that is, number one, we now have an Endor raid where she is going to be one of the teams out there. We don't know how good she's going to be, but it would be nice not just to have her, but her fellow teammates like Stormtrooper and Death Trooper that are going to be a part of it. And also, one of the other things that really changed things from an external point of view, and when I say external, I mean something that CG, the developers, did in the game that changes things, is they completely killed the profundity counter to Leviathan. Love it or hate it, it's the reality now. And one of the best counters that we have to the Leviathan, one of the only counters we have to the Leviathan right now, involves Uden, Iden, Versio, and really rather her ship under the Chimera. And the higher relics that she has, the better off that team is going to do. So again, one of the reasons why you want to pivot is because if CG has done something in the game that changes the concept of value, where Sortie might have been better beforehand, and now that we have these changes to the Leviathan as well as to the upcoming raid, Iden actually increases more, and I'm, instead of bringing up Sortie or T3M4 who's on her team up to a higher relic level, I'm now investing in that. That was the change that I decided to make. The other type of change I want to talk about is an internal change. And the big difference here is when we talk about external changes, the great example of that is CG came up with a new raid, now you need X character for it. An internal change is when something happens in your roster, then now all of a sudden you're not getting good value out of a lot of things you have, and if you just geared up one or two other characters, you would. So the best example that I have for this that I can think of is, let's say you're just casually doing Proving Grounds. Every month you do it, you get your 20 shards or whatever it is, and then you just continue on with life. Well, let's say this month, kind of out of nowhere, you finally unlock the Interceptor for the Empire fleet. And that's great and all, but let's say you don't even have an Empire fleet built, and now you're sitting here with this high value ship, I guess, and you know, you don't have the pilot geared, you don't really have Vader up to snuff because he's used on all the comments, because you use him first so that her reinforcement ability gets to do some really fun things. And you're like, all right, maybe this is the time to pivot. I now have more accidentally kind of invested in the specific concept, so I can move to this rather finishing what I was doing, because, you know, I didn't really invest any of the bad requirements in it, and this will now bring more value to my roster overall because of something else that you might not have really anticipated. Now, the next thing I want to talk about for when you should pivot is for a guild group effort. And we'll caveat this a little bit, a good guild group effort. And what I mean by that is when your guild is like, okay, we're going to make the push for Third Sister. She's an amazing character, and we can't just have the 2, 3, or 4, or 5 people that have already gotten Inquisitors get the shards for us. We're going to make a guild-wide push. That way, not only as a guild do we get her, but as individuals we have her too. She is, awkwardly enough, this is a little bit awkward, she is needed through a guild group effort, but her Omicrons specifically apply in Grand Arena, which is a individual effort. Anyways, and they're saying that this would be a time to pivot, because you really don't want to be, you know, those 5 or 10 people in the guild that kind of refuse to do it when she is as powerful as she is. And also, like, one of the fun parts of the game is the camaraderie that you have with your guildmates being able to do the stuff like that. And as a further note, specifically for Reva, you get like a lot of really bad value if all of a sudden you have Third Sister now because your guildmates worked really hard for it and you never bothered to get Grand himself. That's gonna be kind of not great, because Reva wants to work with Grand and the rest of the Inquisitors that were required to be able to unlock her in the first place. Another example of this might be for Omicrons. Let's say there's a really good TW Omicron out there right now, Juhani, that's a good one. And your guild's like, all right, we want everyone to get this because it's a group effort. We can do that. We can place a wall in TW. We'll win more TW that way. And you're sitting there really thinking, I was supposed to add this second Omicron to Starkiller for GAC. All the YouTubers told me that I wasn't supposed to pivot for anything, so I'm not going to. That would be a time to reevaluate, see what your guild wants, and, you know, again, caveat, make sure it's not something dumb, like if they're all wanting to apply Farm Boy Luke's Omicron for TW. Maybe find another guild, or at a bare minimum, don't pivot from whatever you're doing to do that. And the fifth and final reason when you should pivot, and I don't talk about this a lot, and I realize that both myself and really the channel have a tendency to be totally dominated by the concept of efficiency, like only gear these teams, only Zeta these characters, only put these Omicrons on if you're wanting to win the most. But there does come a time where you have to stop being efficient to just actually enjoy what you're going after. And the best comparison I can give for myself on this is, let's say next year Admiral Trench gets the new capital ship that's coming up. That's going to be the big thing. It's going to be the new meta. It's going to destroy Leviathan. It's going to destroy Executor. It's going to destroy Profundity. It's going to hold on defense because they're going to buff it to do that. And we know that when these ships come out, you need about 25,000 crystals to be able to max them immediately. If all that happens, let's say all that happens next year, and Jar Jar drops as a marquee character, not required for anything, or at least that we know of, just Jar Jar drops, and his kit looks okay, maybe he functions with Padme, I would drop 25,000 crystals on the marquee packs to be able to get Jar Jar, completely sacrificing the new capital ship, a really important farm, because I want to. Simply for that, I love the character of Jar Jar ever since I was a little kid. That's probably why I like Jar Jar, because I was a kid when that movie came out. It's been really close to me. I've always, you know, pictured him in game, what he might look like. I have no idea if he'll be good or if he'll blow up his own team or something like that. But that is the reason to pivot, because something comes out and maybe the value isn't better, but it's something you want to do. And that ultimately, that's the way we should all be playing the game. Of course, if you want to be super uber duper efficient, that is the way the game should be played to you. Don't do that. But when considering everything, that can be a valid reason to pivot. So thank you guys for watching. Let me know what you think. And as always, stay awesome.